meeting for quite a long time for the Lower Paxton Township Historical Commission for March 3rd of 2022. I'd like to welcome everyone who's coming again for our first in-person hearing, both here in the audience as well as those who are looking through the television. I want to introduce to you two new members. The Lower Paxton Board of Supervisors approved our constituency to become 9 members rather than 7, and so we've grown by 2. I'm going to introduce you to those 2 new members. One is Sarah Green. She is the director of the Bureau of State Library with the Office of the Commonwealth Libraries. Her skills in preservation, cataloging, and management of artifacts will greatly aid our commission, as well as her grant writing skills. And this is Sarah Green to my immediate left. On my far left is Pam Valencia, who attended the first meeting of this commission on March 1st of 2018, which means we're 4 years old, and has worked with Denise and Christy in obtaining a list of valid historical properties in Lower Paxton Township. On January 10th, 2019, Pam and her husband made a presentation about their home, the Eisenhower House, that was built around 1820. Recently, Pam also introduced us to aerial photography of our township, which should also be a valuable resource for our commission. So we welcome both of you to our commission, and it's great to have both of them here. For April 7th, we're going to have an in-person presentation about the Lower Paxton School District, which became the Central Dauphin Jointure, if you remember that, and now the Central Dauphin School District. So it should be a good idea, a good history, not only of the school district in our township, but also a history of our township as well through the school district history. Our chairman, David Doyle, is not here. He is on vacation. Christy Kessler, our secretary, is not here. She's on vacation. Bill Minsker, one of our commissioners, is not here. He's on vacation. So it's, I guess they all made reservations at the same time. And Denise Donner will be taking minutes for us this evening. I'd ask now for those of you who can stand to stand with us, and we'll be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Denise Daimler.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, we'll have the presentation for the evening. It'll be about Hodges Heights, and will be, of course, led by Bob Thomas.
Presented or narrated, perhaps, made up, maybe. Good evening. My name is Bob Thomas. This presentation was originally slotted for February in recognition of Black History Month. We've made a habit of doing a local Black history presentation in February of each year. So we had this slotted for last month, but some of us were just getting over COVID, so we thought we'd delay it a month, and thank goodness we're all here today. This is somewhat of a unique topic historically in that we're actually going to talk about an entire subdivision, a neighborhood, and that's a little unusual. I don't think we've done that before. And it's also a presentation that I don't think we've touched this before, where we can use history as a measuring device in terms of society norms and where our country was in the past and where we are today. So I think there's a valuable lesson there to be had. What we're going to do is I'm going to present some facts based on some research we did. That'll be the boring part, and then we have a guest speaker who will liven it up and will share what growing up in Hodges Heights was like. So let's move on, Amanda. Some of you might be asking, where exactly is Hodges Heights? I know I've mentioned this locally to some friends of mine, and they didn't know what I was talking about. Hodges Heights is located in the very southeast corner of the township, just south of Union Deposit Road. Let me get my little clicker going here. Just south of Union Deposit, and just west of Nye Creek and Nye Road. If you ever saw Conway Rd come off Union Deposit, it also comes off Nye Road here. Hodges Heights is located on Conway Road. So it's not an area that if you didn't have a reason to cut through there, you maybe would never know that this neighborhood was there. All right, Amanda. In fact, you would drive by it and it looks like any other neighborhood in the township. Well-kept houses, nice yards, just a normal neighborhood. But you would miss the historical significance of the neighborhood. That historical significance is that it is the only historically black subdivision in Lower Paxton Township. And in researching this, I think it even goes beyond just our township. I think in the whole region, this neighborhood was unique in its time. It is the result of the determination of one individual, a gentleman by the name of Elmo Hodge, who, in order to address discriminatory housing practices in the 1950s, he decided to create his own subdivision. And basically what that did, it afforded the American dream of home ownership to the local black community. I mean, in the 1950s, our country was in a different place. I did some research. For example, the federal fair housing law did not go in effect until 1965. The voting rights law did not get enacted till 1965. So in the mid-1950s, we were in a different place. And I think if you just put a stick in the ground right there as our measuring point, that's where we'll start tonight. And you'll hear the whole story. Now, we always like to look at some of the history of the land when we do these things. And, you know, Denise is able to trace these things back to the 1700s. The original land patent was issued to a Jacob Snyder. It was a large tract, 357 acres. It eventually gets divided into a north and south sections. And in 1792, the southern section is purchased by Frederick Castle. And the next slide will show you, back in the 1700s, I guess they had a habit of naming their farms. Everybody has a name for their property. So the tract we're talking about is this tract right here. And you can see it was called Castleburg because somebody named Castle owned it. And you all know I'm a history geek, so this is a little bit history geekish, but it kind of struck me funny that in the 1700s, everybody gave a name to their farm, and none of those names have survived. Yet, here we are today, and the property owner of the Hodges Heights piece will carry his landowner's name probably forever. So it was just kind of funny, like all those old names have gone away, but this name's going to stick around for a while. Doing a satellite view just to kind of give you an idea, you know, that old map that you looked at. Can you go back a couple slides? I forgot something. Yeah, right there. These are hard to read, obviously, but basically Union Deposit Road's kind of along here. Here's Nye Run running down through here. There's a lot of history in this southeastern part of our township. And I'll give you a little teaser. In May, we're going to do a presentation on President Eisenhower's ancestral roots in Lower Paxton Township. We're going to be back in this same neighborhood. And in fact, we're going to be talking about, if you can go back one more, Amanda, right here. This adjacent property here is going to come up when we talk about the Eisenhowers. So just to give you a little bit of the history in the area. All right, sorry. I'm not giving you the wink like I'm supposed to. I don't want to get in trouble. You can see that the lot was divided in half. All right, Amanda, we'll go to the next one. Actually, in starting our research, we hit the gold mine. We found an article that was published in 2014 by, of all publications, the Berg magazine, which probably isn't anything. I've seen it for free in different places. But one of their reporters interviewed the daughter of Elmo Hodge, Susan Hodge Ashe. And this article provided us with a wealth of information, and this will be the backbone of what we present tonight. So we're using this article, and like I said, it's the developer's daughter, so I think she knew what went on here. All right, Amanda. Elmo Hodge Sr., there was a junior. Wife Sibby had 8 children, 4 boys, 4 girls, if I have it right. He operated a trash hauling business. He owned a small pig farm in the Edgemont area of Susquehanna Township, which is just outside the city line. And in 1945, he purchased this 117-acre farm in Lower Paxton Township. Now, I'll be careful how I say this, because I can't tell you that I can guarantee you that he's the second African-American farm owner. He is the second one that we've become aware of in our research. The first one being the Foots, had the Foot Farm in Linglestown, which we did last year. So in 1945, based on what our knowledge base is, he became only the second African-American farm owner in the township. And then I have some of the snippets from the article, which basically repeats what I said up there. But as I looked at this, I kind of started to get a picture of an entrepreneurial gentleman and a hard worker. And I think that comes into focus later. All right, Amanda. According to the article we found, Elmo farmed the farm himself for 10 years. In the mid-1950s, he was offered $175,000 for the farm, which if you Google that in today's money is about $1.7 million. Not a lot of money. At the time of settlement in the Dauphin County Courthouse, he learns that the prospective buyers have planning a residential development and that he as a black individual would not be able to own property in this development. He gets up and storms out of the courthouse. The farm wasn't for sale anymore. And he decided he was going to develop his own subdivision, not limited to any race. And so basically, he saw something was wrong and said, I'm going to do something about it. And again, this is 1950s, so a little different time. Hodges Heights was a formal subdivision plan. All right. This, again, I'm recapturing what Susan Hodge had mentioned, offered him the 175, and without a second thought, he turned down the money and walked out of the courthouse. So that takes a lot, I think, to walk away from a small fortune based on principles. And that's what he did. And he not only walked away, he did something about it. And I think that's the great... So his as Susan said, Daddy dreamed of a community where people of all colors would be able to live together in peace and harmony. So he wasn't discriminating back the way he was being discriminated against in the first place. This says he laid out 97 1/4 acre lots. We couldn't come up with that many lots in terms of a subdivision plan. Easily could have been done on a 117-acre farm. The lots originally were $900 and sold for as much as $2,000. And a resident who built in the 1950s added, it was exciting to be able to build the home that you wanted and to know it was the first in the area to be an all-black, custom-built community. So that's how Hodges Heights started. We've been able to locate the subdivision plans for Section 1 and 2, which I'll show you, and those had 33 lots on them, varying size, 1/4 acre or more. There were minimum house value requirements. To build in this neighborhood, you had to build a house worth so much money. I did check the tax map. Amazingly, there's been construction in this subdivision from 1956 to 2007. Most of the construction occurring in the 60s and 70s. And the first home was constructed in 1956 by Elmo's brother, Donald. who I believe Linda was a master concrete contractor. The Section 1 subdivision plan showed 6 lots on the south side of Conway. Conway cut right through the middle of this property. So Section 1 was 6 lots on the south side. All right. Section 2, there were 27 lots total, and it added 2 new roads, Jordan and Donald Drives. All right. I pulled this quote from Susan Hodge. Among the buyers were doctors, dentists, teachers, mid-level managers in the private sector, auditors. Many were proud graduates of historically black colleges and universities. So it was somewhat of a professional neighborhood, or a lot of professionals that lived in this neighborhood. And then she also mentions a lot of the children that came from there, and it's pretty impressive. Dentists, neonatologists, Rhodes Scholars, investment bankers, whom she babysat, university professors, truck drivers, professional sports figures, a colonel, and federal government employees. So it was a professional clientele in the neighborhood. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was that there's also, if you drive back there, you'll find one of the township's official township parks, Hodges Heights Park, sits on land that was part of the original Hodges Elmo Hodge farm. So you'll actually see a sign for a township park out there as well. I think just a few observations, and this I sat down with Linda, who's going to speak shortly, and just some things I thought about. This was a very rural setting. I mean, the Snavely farm and Snavely meat market was just north of this neighborhood. And this has been a predominantly rural area until fairly recently. There's been a lot of development, and there's more coming out that way, but it was pretty much a rural area. Residents from all walks of life, graduates of the historically black colleges and universities. Linda shared that there's several multi-generational owners where the children of the original owners have bought or still own the parents' property. And there have also been cases of people who grew up in the neighborhood, moved away, and have come back now to live. And, if you remember that earlier quote about Daddy's dream was a neighborhood for people of all colors, it's my understanding that over the years the neighborhood has become more diverse. But all the original owners in this neighborhood were African American. So I think Elmo's dream did come true. So those are some of the facts we've been able to pull together. I now want to introduce Linda Kamek. Moved to Hodges Heights at a very young age in 1958. Her parents built the third house in the neighborhood. And we asked Linda to just come out and share what it was like, because I think you basically grew up, Linda, while the neighborhood was growing up. So it was kind of but some of the things she shared with me were very interesting. So please welcome Linda Kamek.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you for inviting me, Mr. Thomas. I enjoyed meeting with you and sharing some things, but I'm really excited because I am the oldest kid from there. In July of 1958, well, first of all, let me go back to my parents. My mother, or my grandfather, who was my mother's father, moved to Harrisburg from High Point, North Carolina, where he had a cab company. They moved up here, and we moved to Her Street, which is at Midtown, 405 Her. The house is still there. And that's when I was born. That was 1955. And then we left there and we moved to North 16th Street. At that time, it was my grandfather, Mr. Kenley. It was my grandmother, his wife, my mother's mother, and my mother, Rachel Kamek. We had intended on moving in July of 1958, but my grandmother passed in February of 1958. So she never got an opportunity to move to Hodges Heights. So it was my grandfather, my mother, and myself. I was 3 years old at the time. And my grandfather was, when he moved here as a steel worker. He worked at Bethlehem Steel, and he worked in the blast furnace, which there is no longer. I understand it's an electric furnace now. That gentleman must know. He must have been at the steel mill too. I used to always get upset because my grandfather would leave at night, and he said, I have to go to work. And I said, well, where are you going? I'm going to the steel mill. Well, to a 3-year-old, what does the steel mill mean? I didn't know what that meant. He would always work 11 to 7 every night. He worked and he worked. And at some point, he lost his eye at the steel mill, at the blast furnace. So he came out of there, and what are we going to do now? Well, he knew Elmo Hodge very well. They were businessmen. We had a grocery store at that time, as did Mr. Hodge on the hill. We had ours uptown. My mother worked at Mechanicsburg Naval Supply Depot, SPCC. And between my mother and my grandfather, they decided, well, let's build a home. So in July of 1958, we built a home. The first home was built by Donald Hodge, who was Elmo's brother. He was a brick mason or a concrete mason. He had 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls. Next to him was his brother, Robert Hodge, and his wife, Miss Edie. They have both since, of course, passed, and his son just passed not too long ago. I don't know if any of you remember the name Pinky, Thomas Goodson. He played the organ around here, but he passed within a year ago. Well, the second house, the first house that was built was Mr. Donald Hodge's house. That was in 1956. The second house was built on Lighters Lane, and that was built by Mr. Gene Fairfax. He was what they called in those days an alderman, which is the same as a district justice now. So his office was located in Harrisburg, not far from Broad Street Market on Marion Street. And that was the second house. We were the third house. That was 1958. Growing up there were no streetlights. There was no concrete or any macadam down on the ground. We just had those big, huge gray gravel stones, which is what we rode over and played on. And I have the marks to show it. Those were the best. I'm like, well, where are the rest of the kids? When are they coming? Well, it was just little old me, 3-year-old by myself, and so I made the best of a bad situation. Finally, the kids started coming. Mr. Hodges, Donald Hodges' son, Darrell, who is now deceased, and his son, Donald, is now deceased as well. They came and he played football at CD. Donald did. He was a good football player. Well, I'm 3, okay, time to go to kindergarten. So I attended Southside Elementary. I went through kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade. 3rd grade, they sent us to E.H. Phillips. 4th grade, they sent us back to Southside. So 4th, 5th, and 6th, it was Southside. Junior high school, those were the best days at Lower Paxton. I shall never forget it. Mr. Falsnut, oh my goodness. And after that, after Lower Paxton, then I attended and graduated from Central Dauphin, which is where I played sports and was in the band and made the best of a bad situation again. And more kids were coming and more houses were being built. And so after I graduated from Central Dauphin in 1973. And I then attended North Carolina Central University, which is located in Durham, North Carolina, which is an HBCU. I graduated, and my grandfather was my best friend. He always would surprise me beginning every school year with a brand new book bag. I thought that was the best thing in the world, and he would always hide it under his front car seat. Always. I went looking for it one time. He goes, "What are you looking for, girl?" And I said, "Where's my book bag?" He said, "I'm not getting you a book bag. What are you talking about?" But he tricked me, because then he put it on the passenger side. But he used to do stuff like that. I was just so excited. I mean, it was so small, but it meant so much to me. So anyways, after that, I came back home. After I graduated, I had an offer with Miller Brewing Company in Eden, North Carolina, to work in management. But my grandfather, I didn't know, had prostate cancer. And I just couldn't leave him, because he was always there for me. So I turned that job down and came back to Harrisburg. I took care of my grandfather until he passed January 17th, 1980. He didn't want anyone else to do anything for him but me. When I came back, I was fortunate. I found a position as a teacher with the Harrisburg School District, and I taught for 30 years. Whew, that was the longest 30 years, and I'm glad I'm done. I retired in 2020, right before the pandemic hit. But I had a daughter, and she also attended North Carolina Central University. She's my legacy. She decided to stay in North Carolina. So I have a six-year-old grandson, and I miss them. We talk all the time. We FaceTime, we do whatever. But I go down there quite frequently. Anyways, back to Hodges Heights. Well, in order to purchase a home there, you had to, I remember my grandfather saying that your home had to cost $50,000. In 1958, that was a lot of money, but my mother had a good job, my grandfather had a good job. Between the two of them, they could afford it. It was good. So they built the home. And after that, I don't know whose home went up after ours, but we started getting more people coming into the neighborhood. When I was growing up as a kid, there was Snavely's Meat Market. I don't know how many of you remember that, Mr. Snavely. His son Joey, he was our age, so we all played together. But as kids, we would always, or I would, go around to the meat market while they were slaughtering pigs and cows. You're like, really? But it was interesting, I mean, because that's where your food comes from. And so, I mean, all the kids just got together, and we went there, and then we went to the barn, and we fed the cows until the pigs chased us up the street one day. But that was all good. We still didn't stop. We went back to the butcher farm again. So Mr. Snavely's two granddaughters still live there on Conway Rd. We all went to school together. The one granddaughter would always bring cow eyes or pig eyes or something in for show and tell. You know what I mean? It's all good. Okay. I mean, so that, a lot of information. So between them living on Conway and then the kids coming up in Hodges Heights, there where we started to finally say, oh, wow, we really got kids out here now. So we did have another gentleman who built next to our house. It was Mr. Atkins. He was also an alderman. I don't know if anyone remembers Mr. Atkins. His son, Billy, is a brain surgeon. Now, we also had the Phillips, who had, I think, 6 kids. They're all doctors. They're either doctors and dentists. The son is a doctor and a dentist in the Army. The other daughter is she's into medicine. The other daughter, they're all doctors. They have, she's into theater. And so those kids, their house was always like Macy's department store during Christmas time. So that's where mostly all the kids went because they had 6 kids. Well, we were a very tight-knit community. Everyone helped everyone. I don't know, our doctor was Dr. Salva Maycutt. Does anybody remember Dr. Maycutt? Oh, I loved him so. He was in Rutherford. And they don't put them up anymore, but those big snow fences, because we used to have drifts so badly that came across Leiter's Lane. Well, we were snowed in, and we kind of lived off of Leo's Dairy. Anybody remember the glass milk jugs? Ooh, I have some. Yes, for a souvenir. That was the only way everything was unplowed, because every time they plowed, it would just blow right back. So that's where the men in the neighborhood got together, and they had duffel bags, and they would go around to each house and find out what we needed, milk or bread or eggs, and they would make that track down to the dairy and bring it back. Well, getting back to Dr. Maycutt, I had strep throat. Dr. Maycutt walked from Rutherford to my house on the corner of Donald and Jordan Drive with his little black bag. It's so vivid, like it was yesterday to me. I just remember so well. He came to see me, and over the years, I kept in touch with him until he passed. And I was a elected board member on the Harrisburg School District. He and his wife ran into me at a restaurant, and they so graciously wanted to donate to my campaign. And he kept in touch, and we kept in touch over the years, which was so sweet of him. But he would always make house calls. Doctors don't do that anymore. I'm sure we all know that for one reason or another. But I will always, always remember him. He was a bright spot in all of our lives. I think that was everyone's doctor out there. I am moving back to the home that I left a few years ago, and I'm so excited about it. The guys were out there today taking some trees down for me, and it's starting to come together, and I can't wait to get back. I'm old. I'm getting up there. Osteoarthritis is knocking on the back door, so I can't do the steps like I used to. So it's the ranch, so I'm good to go now. So I can't wait. I hope to be in there probably about next year. But I had some wonderful, wonderful memories growing up in Hodges Heights. I will never, ever forget it. When I went to Central Dauphin and graduated, there were 14 blacks out of 1,200 students. I got along with everybody. Color meant nothing to me. That's the way my parents raised me. I still keep in touch with some of my classmates now. I'm coming up on I think my 50th year anniversary reunion. And it was just the best times. It was the best times. I enjoyed going to school in North Carolina, but I also like coming back home to see. I do keep in touch with a lot of young people, and a lot of them are gone as well. But we had the best memories. Everybody worked together. Everybody stood together. Everybody took up for each other wherever they could if there were people that passed. So I'm probably I am the oldest living child from that era. Actually, yes. So I feel really excited, and it has grown. It has grown quite extensively. So I believe that's the end of my presentation, and I will be glad to answer any questions if anyone has any, if I can. Yes, ma'am.
When did Elmo move?
Elmo moved, and he built a home at the end of Delano Boulevard, which was off of Jordan Drive. You go all the way back, but at some point the house caught on fire and burned down. And I can't remember what year that was, but he lived there until he passed because he remarried. and then he passed. Yes.
And now I'm gonna butt into the next presentation when it's about school districts. But you went to Central Dauphin High School?
I went to Central Dauphin High School on Locust Lane.
That people that live there now go to East.
Yes, they do, I believe. Yes. But at that time, we went to LP and we went to CD. Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
There's a few of us here.
Yes, yes, yes. Good old days, yes. Anyone else?
Thank you, Linda. I
Okay.
appreciate
Thank you,
coming
everyone.
out.
Thank you.
Now, what Linda didn't tell you is that I remember her from high school, and she could sing. She had an incredible voice. I do remember that. So, but thank you for sharing that, and I think you can tell the story better than anybody else because you lived it there, and it's a unique piece of history in our neighborhood that, like I said, if you don't know the history, you would drive right by it and have no idea why it's there or what went on there decades ago. And so thanks, Linda, for coming out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob and Linda. Thank you so very much for your presentation and for all your work. I know it takes a lot of work to get one of these presentations together. But I also want to thank Elmo Hodge. It only takes one person to change what's possible. And I think that's what he did, and I think he'd be very proud of what legacy he is still building yet today in Hodges Heights.
I think you hit that right, Donnie. I mean, and I've told different folks this, you hear about things, big national news, so-and-so did this or that. But here we had a common man, like the rest of us, who saw something that wasn't right and said, I'm not going to stand for this, and did something about it. And he moved that proverbial social football down the field a little bit here in Lower Paxton Township. So, it's kind of a neat story that, and this is probably the only place you'll ever hear the story. So I'm glad we did it. It's now memorialized, and now people will know the story. Thanks, Linda.
I had a I was wearing my shirt today, and a guy pointed to it and said, Lower Paxton Historical Commission. He says, does Lower Paxton have history? And I said, well, tonight would be a good night for you to come out to our meeting. And I said, you can also join us by cable. So if he's joining us, he's heard a great meeting about a great individual. If you indulge us just for a few moments, we have some business activities to take care of. The February minutes will be approved at our next meeting, so we won't have to review or approve those tonight. Under old business, again, the April presentation will be on about the Central Dauphin School District. And since we're all Lower Paxton Junior High School attendees, I am trying to acquire a piece of artwork that hung in the Lower Paxton Junior High School from the day it opened as Lower Paxton High School until it closed as Lower Paxton Junior High School. So I'm getting close. And so hopefully I'll have a word back this week yet as to that acquisition. And then we'll probably have that for presentation next month. Also, we want to create a flyer for the Central Dauphin School District presentation next month. And I don't know if David will be in touch with anybody here, but we want to get something together regarding the flyer. We'll talk about that later. As far as the postcard, the artwork for our biannual or twice annual postcard is completed, and I don't think. No, let's not show anybody. We'll have to wait till it's and. That's going to be up. We're going to have that printed as well as put the description on the back, and that'll be handed out at a future event. This is probably more for Bill Minsker. There was supposed to be living history interviews with Bill Morris and Sandra Prawl. So we'll save that again for next month. Under new business, there's nothing at this time. Is there any committee member comments? None? Is there any public comment at this time? Okay. Then if not, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
And a second? All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.